Hey there. Today we're talking with Emilia D'Anzica, someone you absolutely want to hear from if you care about growing revenue and keeping customers for life. Emilia, if you don't know her, is a powerhouse in customer success. She's the founder of Growth Molecules, which is a really cool consulting firm in the customer success space. She's also a fractional chief customer officer and a trusted advisor to some of the fastest scaling software companies out there today. Emilia has spent her career solving many of the challenges that lots of us wrestle with every day: customer retention, team alignment, and scaling our operations. And in today's episode, Emilia shares things like action plans that actually work to drive renewals, AI's role in saving time for you and your team, and what leaders get wrong in their first 100 days on the job. If you've ever felt like your customer success strategy just isn't pulling its weight, this conversation will give you tools and tips you can put to work right away. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Emilia D'Anzica. Hey, Emilia, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
Now, I'm excited to talk to you. You've had a lot of experience in the tech space, in customer success as a interim chief customer officer. I think you've called yourself a serial interim chief customer officer, and you're also the founder of Growth Molecules. So you've seen a lot in the space around customer success, account management, and how to really be customer centric. So one of the things that I know is a really big challenge, particularly for leaders, that I want to talk to you about is especially now, right? It's the beginning of the year. Everybody's excited for their new initiatives. They want to get stuff done. And a lot of people have big programs that they want to roll out. They've got big ambitions as it relates to being more customer centric, or building a renewal playbook, or finally getting their QBRs all consistent, or implementing software to help the team. And, I've seen a lot of these happen as well. And what I know is, often the could be a VP of CS, VP of account management, chief customer officer. They can be kind of operating in a silo, if you will. So they might have big plans and ambitions and want to get stuff done, but they have a hard time seeing their projects through. They have a hard time getting everything they want accomplished. I think it has to do with silos and leadership and kind of how people think about it. But I know that you've had a lot of experience in this space. And so just broadly speaking, as we kick off this conversation here, Emilia, how should a leader start to think about rolling out these kind of programs? What are the considerations that he or she should be keeping in mind? Like, how do we approach this?
I think there are two critical things to consider from a leadership perspective when you're trying to roll out anything. And that's one, what is the North Star for the organization and how does this initiative fit in it? Critical. Otherwise, what are people marching towards? Potentially silos, because as humans, we're selfish, which leads into the second idea that I think is critical is what's in it for me. So first, what's the company's North Star? What's our organization doing in this grand scheme of things? And then what's in it for the individuals who are going to make it possible? If you aren't answering those two questions around the why for the company, the why for me, then people can quickly get lost or working in silos. And I think that's really important, understanding the big picture and then breaking it down into micro steps to success. And that's where I would start as a leader.
Yeah, I think those are both really important. So the North Star, where are we going? What's it going to take to get there? Don't ignore the what's in it for me question. So for everybody who's on the team. So, I've worked with a lot of companies that are either rolling out software, some big program that they want to improve their account management, and they forget that stuff, right? Someone gets all inspired because they listen to a podcast like this one, or they read a book, or they see someone on stage and they're like, yes, that's what I want to do. And we don't necessarily think through all the stuff. One of the things that I always found to be something that people were under investing in, and this goes into the mindset that we have of walking into a project, they were under investing in things like training and change management. So, like the actual implementation of all this stuff. Partly because, a lot of senior executives think, oh, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm just going to dust off my fancy playbook or my fancy template, or, bring in a software vendor, and bang, that's going to be my problem solved. And in reality, there's a lot of work required to like get this thing working and fully moving within the organization.
100%.
Yeah, yeah. What's your sense on change management approaches, implementation, training? Like how deep does your experience run in that area, and how do you think about that?
Well, I think aligning people, process, and systems around change is critical. There are numerous stats out there that show the billions of dollars lost during especially a digital transformation. And you really need to start with potentially three things. Let's just simplify everything. One is defining people's roles and responsibilities during that time of change. So clearly outlining who owns what. I cringe when people says everyone owns customer success or everyone owns this goal that the company's achieved. Actually, no, you need to break it down and really explain who owns the function. And there are studies out there. One really powerful one I found recently from Gainsight's research team shows that when you have clearly defined roles, the net revenue retention is as high as 33% over your competitors. That's significant. And
Simply by having clear roles within the team and definitions.
exactly,
Okay.
especially during change management, people don't like change. Again, it goes back to the human psychology. We we take time to learn something, then practice it, then feel confident. And now you're telling me 2 years later, we're changing systems again. It's exhausting. And so you want to make sure you clearly define the roles and responsibilities. And one of the best ways I have found that to work is with a RACI model. At our organization, Growth Molecules, we really support teams, especially when they're changing the go-to-market strategy or the customer journey map. We start with a RACI model. And for those who haven't used it before, it's who are the people on your team who will be responsible for the day-to-day work, who's accountable for achieving those goals, so overseeing more of the bigger picture, and then who should be consulted in this initiative. You have experts, whether it's in technology, persona expertise, whatever that might be. And then the people like the CEO or your leadership needs to be informed of progress. In fact, I would argue if your company has Friday meetings for the whole team, everyone should be informed, especially during a massive transformation engagement. I also think that during any change implementations, there should be a standardized process for how you'll document it, how you'll automate it to ensure that there's going to be consistency. That's really, really important because if one team is using one platform to document or process and another team is using completely different metrics, processes, systems, imagine what the output will look like. It's going to be a Frankenstein output. And then last but not least, just making sure that you have the right tech stack. I really think it's important. If you're using something that is highly manual, there's so much room for error. And I think in a world where everyone's talking about AI, let's start using it. Let's start playing with it. And so making sure that you automate as much as you can during change management is critical. The one thing you can't automate with tech is making sure that people feel like they're part of the mission and the change and that you're enabling them during change. And those are the big three things: standardizing process, making sure you have the right tech in place, and then defining roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, and I like the way that you frame that. That the only thing you can't really automate here is, do I feel buy-in? Am I committed to the process? Am I committed to the person? Because if we don't have that part, then the initiative is not going to succeed. How do you recommend leaders really get that enrollment or buy-in?
I would start way before any change management happens, right? You need to tell people, just like when your product is changing. Think about Salesforce or any of these large companies when they may have two releases a year. They're updating you leading up to those releases before there's any cutover. So starting small with continuous communication, having a communication plan during the change, and then communication plan afterwards. It's just like marketing or selling to a prospect. You need to touch them 6 to 8 times before they'll finally click the button and schedule a meeting with you. It's similar with getting buy-in from your team, starting small and then having continuous touch points to ensure that everyone feels empowered and enabled during that time of transformation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I know that I want to pull on a thread that you're just talking about there. I know that you've been active with a lot of different companies over your career. You've been with some really cool companies. You've been with some of the newer AI companies that are coming out. And at Growth Molecules, you help implement customer success platforms and make sure all that stuff is working. Since AI is such a big topic right now, I'm just curious to get your sense of like, what are the easiest opportunities here for post sales teams? So if I'm a CS team, if I'm an account management team, I already have tons of software all around me, and do I need more stuff? What is being pulled out of my day to day work that I no longer have to do because of AI? Where are the benefits? What are you seeing people do in terms of like the first obvious step?
I like to think of myself as an early adopter. I love trying things and giving feedback when people give me access to their technology. And one of the platforms that I fell in love with, adopted quickly, our whole team uses it now, for example, is Update AI. It is a platform that has completely eliminated not only meeting tracking of action items and recording, but also it creates the follow up email for our team. And when you think about customer success managers, today we are so maxed out. We have so many meetings, even though every Harvard study out there shows that we're really productive about 6 hours a day. So the idea of having 10 meetings and then having to follow up with emails for each client is exhausting to even say. And so having something like a platform that writes your emails for you, of course, you'll want to add a bit of your tone or whatever it is. You may have to tweak them. The nice thing is, even if I don't send those emails out the same day, the client gets a recap that's auto generated. Now, I know there are other platforms out there that are doing it as well. The other nice thing is all of these emails are automatically, emails and recordings are automatically uploaded to our CRM. So if I can't remember what we talked about on the last meeting, I quickly go to the client in our CRM and can see exactly what we discussed or listen to the conversation. So those are just some of the things that I believe leaders should be exploring immediately. If you can reduce that manual, tedious work of trying to remember what you talked about, especially if you didn't catch everything in writing, is tremendous. You get so much more time to focus on what really matters. And that's developing relationships and looking at data to help your client's business move forward.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's about being a guide for your customers. It's about delivering insights to them. Your job is not to do glorified admin as an account manager. And I think you're absolutely right. I think the if we can eliminate some of those tasks around my day to day work. So, what did we talk about on the call? What were the action items? Did we do these things? Did we send the follow up to the customer? All those are just like so basic. a lot of the tools, Update AI sounds awesome. A lot of the tools are very far along in this, right? Like probably none of them are perfect, but it's way better than whatever we're doing today. I know that some now add coaching into them, or they add sentiment analysis so that you can get a sense for, like, is your customer having a good day or a bad day, and that sort of thing. So those are all helpful too. But as the kind of starting point, that sounds totally right on. Now, what do you think about AI for customer communications?
I think it's great. I mean, having continuous touch points is incredibly important. And if you think about the C-suite, imagine how many platforms they're investing in, how many meetings they're in. Unless they have to be in a meeting, they're going to skip it. And I'm guilty of that as well. I can't be on every client call, but what I do ask the team is to add me as optional. And the really cool thing about products like Update AI and others, I mean, I was a fractional leader at Chorus before ZoomInfo acquired them, is that it gave me a recap of the meeting because I was invited as optional. And then if I log into the platform, I can see exactly every meeting and every note or keywords, competitor keywords, all of the different things. I think that's really important for leadership, is feeling like you can still have a pulse on what's happening without actually being present in the room. So I think that's really important. The other thing AI has done is even simple product-led products like Grammarly. Uh, every week I get an update. I have a paid subscription that shows me what was my tone or my sentiment in my communication, as well as anything that I haven't integrated. I think that's pretty fantastic, and it really drives adoption. And I tell clients this often: you shouldn't have meetings just to have a check-in. You should have something that's relevant to the company. Otherwise, automate the reports and insights to your clients. I am sure they will thank you that they can quickly see the input and then click on a link if they want to schedule more time with their CSM. People don't want to be on the phone all the time. And I truly believe it will continue this way as the newer generation enters the workforce. I mean, for anyone who has teenagers or college kids, they do not want to be on the phone. I can say that firsthand.
Well, I mean, that's a helpful observation, and it's something we talk about when we talk about QBRs, for example. So everyone has this idea that quarterly business reviews have to be done every 90 days across their whole customer set and so on. And in reality, very few people have asked themselves, is this what the customer wants? Or, by the way, is this what I want? Are any of us getting what we want out of these sets of meetings? And so the more that we can automate stuff or simplify the reporting or make sure that the information is getting to where it needs to be without everyone gathering together and sitting down, the better. It doesn't mean that we don't want to take that opportunity when the opportunity arises, but we want to automate stuff as much as possible. And actually, for me, a question is coming up here. You've had like a 360-degree view of a lot of these sales, account management, and customer success teams. And when I look at it, one of the problems that I know that CSMs and AMs get into is they create this great big list of stuff to do in their heads, right? We all think that the more things I put on my plate, the better, right? And partly this is because a lot of executives or other people in the company don't actually understand what they do on a daily basis, right? They don't understand what an account manager is or does. And so as a result, you ask an account manager, hey, what do you do? What's your job? And they'll say, it's QBRs, it's client health, it's renewals, it's check-ins, it's talking to the product team, it's making sure this thing is working, talking to this stakeholder, chasing this thing down, that thing. So they got this great, big, huge, long list of things that they think they're supposed to be doing. And I'd love to get your reaction to this, because when I talk to account managers and they give me this huge list of stuff, I'm like, wow, you're really missing an opportunity to narrow this down to the two or three things that matter, right? And I've got my own definition of those two or three things that matter. But I'm curious for you, like, work with teams? How have you coached your teams in the past to do to do the 20% of things that deliver 80% of the results and try to
Mhm.
spend less time on all the noise?
Yes. Oh, there's so much noise out there, right?
Yeah.
First of all, turn off all of your notifications and things that are distracting you. I would just start there. I think it's critical, and as humans, we are losing the art of concentration. Just ask how many people still read a book, or what was the last book they read. It's really sad. A lot of people are losing that. And so they fill their time with things that are not relevant to their success. And it really starts with having leadership that sets forth, let's start with the North Star, then the key performance indicators that are tied to that. And so knowing what is your goal for the quarter, for the year, first of all, then the quarter, unless something drastic happens like a global pandemic, then that will quickly change, right? But let's say that that's not happening again for another 100 years. Um, Once you know what's on your horizons for the next quarter, break it down by month and then by week and by day. So when we teach through our academy on time management, and this is one of our most popular courses because people just feel overwhelmed. They have hundreds of emails, Slack messages, then their notifications from shopping sites they've been to, all of these things coming to them, and not to mention uh, all the different personal channels, Snapchat, WhatsApp, all of these things coming to you. If you can just write down what are the three things I'm not going to negotiate and accomplish today, and then reflecting at the end of the day and say, what did I complete that I'm proud of and that aligns with my KPIs? And I do this on Fridays. I'll look at my whole week, and the night before any day, especially Sunday, I will do that and look at what do I have for the week and what's critical tomorrow. And I use a notebook. I mean, I write things down. I find it so rewarding to cross those three things out. And the rest are on the side as nice to haves, right? Things that are non-negotiable for me include working out. That is part of my success. And that's being mentally and physically healthy. Because if I don't have that, then the other two and all the nice to haves don't matter. So that's where I would start, is break it down to the three things that you can actually measure. And then the rest, what are they really important? Are they really helping you succeed as an individual and then the company succeed as a team?
Yeah, Amelia. I mean, I think this is so critical because there's an epidemic of burnout in the account management teams and post sales teams right now. Right? It's like we're all being told to do more with less, so we have fewer resources than before. The team is shrinking. The portfolio is the same size, so all of a sudden we all inherited more customers than before. Maybe the company's made other changes or cuts, so now we're getting other internal requests that are taking our time. So everybody is like up here in terms of their busyness, and their energy is super low. So what you're talking about around being very thoughtful around planning what you're going to do, focusing on the 20%, like just minimizing the number of things that you can control and really go out there and get those done, is going to make you so much more effective.
Agreed. And I think the higher you climb the ladder in corporate America, the better you need to be at time management. I know I have lots of emails in my inbox and definitely in LinkedIn that I have yet to answer, but I protect my time to ensure that I'm delivering to my team and to my clients what I signed up to deliver, and then everything else will come after. And most people are forgiving of it. I mean, honestly, I don't know if I owe anyone an answer, especially if I'm doing them a favor versus what I signed up to do for people that I care about, my family, my team, and my clients. That's what I think
Mm-hmm.
really matters.
So in the spirit of trying to separate the signal from the noise here, let me share with you what I think the account manager's three jobs are, and I want to see if I get these right or how you react to them. Because I see these great big lists, like we got 20 things to do and all these crazy KPIs and indicators and so on. And I say, look, the account manager's job comes down to three things. Number one, keep your customers, right? Don't lose your customers. That's your first job. Number two is grow your customers if you can. So if they're at $1 million today, make them $1.5 million next year if that's possible. So keep your customers, grow your customers. And number three is develop an early warning system so you've got no surprises. Like that's it. And then I think that like things like account plans and business reviews and all that stuff, they all fit into one of those three buckets. But in my interpretation, at least, like those three things are what matters. How does that land for you?
100%. And, overarching all of that is our relationships, right? You need to build relationships internally to bring the right resources to make retaining and growing your clients. And then externally with your clients. I think, David Skock wrote about this. There are two reasons why you lose a client: poor onboarding and losing your champion. And as account managers, it's your job to develop relationships. And one of the best people on my team that I remember, um, still, even if we disagreed on a lot of things, we I respected that he built relationships with clients that said we're going to churn. And he was so good at building those relationships and showing the impact of the platform that he was able to turn them around. And so overarching everything you just said is you need to have the courage to build relationships, even with people you don't necessarily agree with. I think that's critical when it comes to growth.
Oh yeah, and this is part of avoiding happy ears, right? When and doing the discovery and asking the questions and seeing where it leads, because our job as account managers is to figure out what is reality. It's not to hide behind the things that we want to hear or hope that it all turns out okay or whatever. It's to figure out what's actually happening so that I can then create a plan and execute a plan to get a certain outcome. And to your point, yes, if you hear that someone's going to churn or they're dissatisfied or something isn't working, you can either go bury your head in the sand, right? Or pretend, let's sweep it under the rug, pretend it's not happening, or go out there, be an adult, have confidence, and sit down and say, what's up? How can I help? Is this still a priority for you? How can we align on, making sure you're successful? Now, I'm curious. You've had experience in building pretty significant teams, and a lot of people have been investing in the post sales motion, right? So we know that for the last several years, especially in the tech and SaaS space, but a lot of companies in general have had pretty tough sales environments. They've been facing tough sales environments, and so they realize, hey, we need to do everything we can to keep our customers, the ones that we've got, and to make them successful. And so it does mean that there's been at least more of an understanding around the power of customer success, the value of key account or strategic account teams. And in your experience, Emilia, what are the things that people aren't thinking about when they go out to execute this kind of strategy? Or what are the blind spots, to put it another way, what are the blind spots that leaders might have when they're told, okay, go double the team, or in some cases, go build this function because we've never done this before? In your experience, what are the things we should be paying attention to and watching out for?
I'll start with building a customer success team. So the first thing is understanding team bandwidth. You really want to build that list out of how are teams spending their time, what can we eliminate, and really focus them. So I think that's critical. If you want to avoid burnout, you need to carefully match your CSM capacity to account loads, and then the quality of engagement that is necessary to drive retention. If you have a product-led platform that most people can figure out on their own, you may not need as many CSMs. You need account managers and a really good community, a knowledge base, and a support team, right? So that is how you start, is understanding team bandwidth. Secondly is when you lack metrics to align teams. And according to TSIA, 69% of CS leaders cite measuring customer outcomes as a top challenge. And I've experienced this firsthand when I ask early stage CEOs, especially when they bring us in to do a company assessment for their post sales strategy. I ask them, what are the key moments during onboarding that drive success, or that have proven by cohort that are leading to renewals or an expansion opportunity? And there's an awkward silence,
And
and
nobody
that's not
knows.
being
Nobody
measured.
can tell you.
Of course, there has to be key moments. There doesn't have to be 10, but there should be 2 or 3. I always say 2 or 3. I mean, 3 is more of a magic number. And when people ask me, what does that even mean? It can be things like, if your platform has an extension, make sure everyone's downloading it, right? That's critical. I mean, I just think of HubSpot. I rarely log in. I just use that extension. It lives on my email and it's critical to my work. So those kind of things are really important. Is you have to be able to measure and align around those measurements. And that starts with clear KPIs, which we've been talking about through this whole engagement. And then lastly, I think it's neglecting cross-functional collaboration. I've been in too many companies, both public and private, where product is building a hammer, support is delivering something completely wrong that doesn't put the hammer back together when it's broken. And then sales is not selling a hammer. It's selling some other tool. And so CS is stuck in the middle, to be honest, trying to deliver what sales had sold. And the worst part is, in a larger company, when you have account managers, they struggle to renew and expand because there's such a disconnect across the go-to-market. And so I think it's really important, and I'm really excited to see that new definitions of go-to-market strategy are no longer just marketing, sales, and product. Customer success, account management, they now have a seat at the table. And that's rewarding because we're the people who have to serve, renew, and then expand when you put out a new product or there are more seats that can potentially be sold.
Yeah, yeah. I want to go through some of those in a little bit more detail and clarify my understanding, and for the audience as well. You said that one of the things at the beginning was the bandwidth of the team. So basically, like, what are we putting on everyone's shoulders? And I've seen different ways of thinking about this. I've seen people think about it in terms of just literally could just be number of accounts, right? So everyone has 10 accounts or 50 accounts or whatever the number is. I've seen people also do it based on portfolio value. And for some reason, for me, that the numbers that I normally hear are like in the $2 to $2.5 million range per account manager. There's some variation to that, but broadly speaking, that seems to be a number that people have determined is okay. And then, of course, there's the question of segmentation. So to your point about the quality of engagement, we're not gonna treat all of our customers the same. It doesn't make sense if they're not the same size, not the same value to us, not the same potential opportunity, they're not as demanding, and so on. And so that's also part of what we want to think about as well. But really tactically here, Emilia, like when you think about bandwidth for someone, how do we then approach these very knotty problems?
Okay, I will tell you, this is one of the most common questions I get. And right now I have the privilege of being an instructor at Booth Business School's executive program for CROs. And several of them also lead customer success or renewals and expansion, the account management motion. And I got this question as well. What I told them, what I'll tell you is, I think that number's made up. I was the book I remember the most, and I love the book. I appreciate what Jason Lemkin has done for not only customer success, but just software as a service and bringing us all together at SaaStr. But his book, From Impossible to Inevitable, huge impact. I have it on my shelf. I love the book. But the one thing I disagree with is the 2 to 2.5 million. If you're in a Series A company and your product is still being sold by the CEO, you're sub 1 million, and your sales is often doing a lot of the CS, for example, there's no way you can handle 2.5 million. Even at Series B, when your product is maybe still not mature, you may not, you're at that point where you need every customer renewal and expansion because you need to raise more money. And so that's when more hand holding is happening. You're asking CSMs to wear way too many hats, and that number will potentially be below 2.5 million. Now, as your product matures, you apply more technology and maybe you apply account management. Then your CSMs can manage more. I think of my time when I was a director of operations across 80 CSMs. The most strategic ones had maybe 10 clients, but each client was paying well over 7 figures a year to leverage our platform. And so, of course, there's no way they could be doing renewals and support and all the other things. They were strictly focused on building relationships and making sure the clients continuously adopted and and worked with the account managers to renew. So I really think it depends on industry, maturity of your platform, and where you are in the what your responsibilities are, whether you're an account manager or a CSM.
Hmm. I also scratch my head a bit when I hear leaders tell me that someone on the team has a portfolio and the portfolio goes from a $10,000 customer to a $1.5 million customer. I always see more success if I'm specializing, meaning I have a small number of people who do key accounts, the really big ones, and then I've got other people who do the house accounts, kind of the mid-size accounts, and then other people who do the small ones. And it confuses me when I see one individual who's got a wide range of of customer accounts. Makes me wonder whether they didn't have a hard conversation, whether they missed the opportunity to really think, is this the right strategy? Is this the good idea?
Yes, I like the idea of working in pods. So if you're serving SMBs, small business owners, for example, um, a product like I think Tapalti, Bill.com, all of those, they have very large public companies who leverage the platform, and then they have SMBs. One, the renewal, the sales cycle is completely different. Imagine how many more signatures you need at a public company. And then two, a small business owner with 2 to 3 people on the team has very different problems. They have very different budgets. They have very different conversations that they want to have with you. And quite honestly, they might not be on email. You have to go visit them in person or pick up the phone or text them. It's a very different communication process. So I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Okay. I heard you say you also talked about you said something like TSIA was saying that 69% of leaders are having a hard time or agreed that tracking customer outcomes was important. We've talked about that a fair bit on this show. I had Greg Danes on a while ago, and he's obviously like the guru. He's the godfather of this conversation around tracking customer value. But one of the things is I'd like to distill some of the myths around this, right? So first of all, customer value, and correct me where I'm going off track here, right? But I don't think of customer value as our internal metrics. Like, did they activate such and such, or turn this on, or deploy within 3 weeks, or whatever the things are that we think are important. I think of customer value as, they said that they had some type of economic impact they were hoping to get with the tool or service or whatever it is that they bought from us. And our job is to figure out how to put that in really clear dollar terms or metric terms, and then get it confirmed by the client, and then go back and show them, hey, we're making progress, or we're losing progress, or whatever it is. But I think a lot of teams get stuck in this idea that, like, oh, the whole thing around value here is related to the stuff that I'm doing as opposed to what the customer is experiencing.
Yes. And I think the problem starts as early as handing off from sales to CS. And again, with the technology out there, there's zero excuse for this. I don't know why we're still discussing it, but one of the biggest friction points are the sales to CS handoff. So making sure that, especially with enterprise sales, you're tracking, why did they come to you? What was the pain point that turned a marketing qualified lead to a sales qualified lead? And really understanding, are they measuring it? Why is this a pain point for your organization? Making sure that's relayed to whoever, whether it's an implementation specialist, professional services, account management, whoever is that is going to be leading the client, because the last thing the client wants to answer are the exact same questions they've been answering for 6 months with
Mm-hmm.
sales.
Mm-hmm.
So going in and confirming at kickoff what you heard is critical. And they may say, you know what, you're right. We're experiencing a huge churn during adoption. We want to improve that. And we want to improve the automation and less manual work for our team. So if those are the pain points and they don't have metrics to measure, then now's a great opportunity with this relationship to start measuring it, finding out what are those numbers, and then focusing, especially during onboarding, on alleviating 2 to 3 of those pain points. I would
Yep.
say that's incredibly important to start. And that's a terrible excuse to say, oh, well, my client doesn't have metrics. We can't measure it. Of course you can. We're starting today. So I think that's really important, is if you can't measure customer outcomes and that's a top challenge of yours, now's the time to start. It can be with 2 to 3 simple things, and you have to go back to the pain point. Stop trying to push your whole product on a client. No one cares about your product. They care about, what is the product going to do to help me alleviate my pain.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, absolutely. Last topic here is, and this is sort of moving it up a level. I know that part of your work at Growth Molecules is you'll work with investors, so VCs and private equity firms and their portfolio companies to make sure that they're set up for success in post sales. What's driving that level of attention right now? What does the investor set think about this type of stuff? Are they seeing,
Mhm.
are they seeing CS and account management as true revenue drivers, or do they still think about it as a cost center? What are the dynamics and the mechanics that are going on there that are causing them to pay attention? Like, why do they call you? What are they trying to get out of it? And how are they then communicating this to their portfolio companies, for example?
Alex, I am so excited. 2024 was definitely a year where we worked with more PE and VC firms than we have in our now almost 5 years as Growth Molecules. And what I believe is driving that is increased churn and the financials that are tied to that, obviously. And so you can have the best people in place, but if you don't listen to your customers and really understand where the friction points across the customer journey, what are you doing? Right? So you have to start somewhere. And sometimes, I mean, I'm biased, but having a third party like ours come in and do a due diligence or a diagnostic assessment and give recommendations that are not biased. We've gone and talked to your clients with you not in the room, and we've talked to your team while you're not in the room, allows us to create a better understanding to help your portfolio investments. And I think that PE and VC firms really appreciate that. While we don't necessarily share everything with them because we want to make sure the actual company who hires us feels that their information is secure, we are willing to share as much as that client is willing to let us share. And the reason any PE and VC firm wants help now more than ever is they want to protect that revenue. You lose one big logo like a S&P, that's not just one logo. It can be 50, 100 departments leveraging your platform. And that's why it matters so much. I think that's why these organizations are reaching out to consulting firms to get more insights and support so that it's not biased and in a supportive nature.
I mean, there's so much more focus on profitability now over growth at all costs. And a big
Mm.
driver of your long-term profitability is, can I get my customers to stick around? We know that it costs money to acquire a customer, and how long it takes to win that money back depends on a lot of factors in your business. But generally speaking, the longer a customer is with you, the more profitable they're going to be. And every year they get more profitable on a percentage basis. So if I'm an investor or an owner in a company, of course, I want us to be laser focused on delivering that versus being inefficient or just chasing any kind of growth that might be out there.
Exactly. And what is tied to that is employee retainment and satisfaction. I think that's
Ah,
incredibly important is every time you hire someone, the investment in time, energy, technology, training, all of that, then to have to keep doing it. I mean, it does bring the company morale down. One really strong leader on your team, one really strong account manager leaves, then people start wondering what happened, what went wrong. Should I start looking for a job too?
yeah.
Especially if you're dumped half of that person's customer accounts, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly you're now responsible for it and you're thinking, what's in it for me? Maybe I should be looking for a job too. And you're frankly not as motivated. So the retainment of clients goes hand in hand with employees.
Yeah, that's a really special point there because people want to work for a company that's winning. They want to feel the wind at their
Mhm.
back. They want to feel like things are going well. And not that many people have yet made the link between customer churn and employee churn and the fact that it's a double punch to the company, right? Because not only do I lose the customer revenue, I then have my most talented and hardest working people potentially looking at the exits because they're no longer inspired. So that's a big deal.
Especially if they go write about their experience on Glassdoor, and
Mm.
then you have challenges hiring. It's cyclical. It's cyclical. That's the reality.
Fantastic. Well, hey, this has been a super conversation with you, Emilia. Thank you so much for coming and sharing this wisdom, and really appreciate you being here with us on Account Management Secrets. Thank you, Emilia D'Anzica.
Thanks, Alex.
All right, great to see you.